Hey guys, this is not the video I originally had planned for you today, nor is it a video I ever thought I was going to be making, but I've spent the last couple of days making these masks and I wanted to share a quick tutorial with you guys on how to do it. I watched a bunch of videos on the best way to make these masks. I've been wanting to make masks for my friends and family and also for my local community for a while now, but there was not a lot of information on which pattern was the best and honestly whether or not this was even an effective tool. And once I saw a couple Facebook pages in my local community of hospitals and nursing homes reaching out and asking for help, and then once the local largest hospital in the area actually put out a call asking for masks and then put out this pattern, I figured it was probably safe to start making these. So the pattern I'm going to show you guys today, I'm just going to show you kind of the tips and the tricks that I've learned along the way. I've taken a little bit, so I'm using the pattern from the hospital, and then I've also taken a few tips from the videos that I watched just to show in a really efficient way to make these, because I'm cranking these out for donation. So it's not the prettiest way to make these, and I'm a very beginner seamstress, and so I just want you guys to know that you can totally do this. It's easier with a sewing machine and faster with a sewing machine, but you can definitely hand sew it. And then there's a couple of options. If you don't have all the materials that I do, there's a couple of different options that you can use. The Mary Washington mask pattern, the written pattern, has elastics here, but that also has a pattern for the ties. And I've been seeing a lot of people, nurses particularly, doctors, people in the medical field, that their ears are getting irritated from having the elastic around them all the time, and so the ties are being asked for. So you can make it in more than one way. And then this particular style also has a piece of wire up at the top that you can mold around the nose to help keep a better fit. And so it's a nice addition, not completely necessary. For the hospital, they're asking for the nose pieces to be put in, but if you're just making this for yourself or somebody you know, don't necessarily have to put that in. And then this also has some pleats sewn into it. And this is the first time I've ever done pleating. So if I can do it, you guys can do it. I'm just gonna take you through this real quick. Depending on how long this video goes, I may or may not speed up the close-ups of the actual sewing happening. I am going to try to keep this as real time as possible so that if you are an inexperienced seamstress or seamster or sewer person, you can do this along with me. If I'm talking too slow and you know the ropes a little bit more but you just want to see the tutorial, there is I think it's a gear button down at the bottom of the screen that you can click on it and you can speed up the video to 1.5 speed or 2 times the speed. Likewise, if I'm going too fast, you can always pause and rewind, but you can also click that same button and slow the video down. So I hope this is helpful. I am by no means a professional seamstress whatsoever, but these masks are coming out pretty well. They're coming out quickly and efficiently, and I just want to share with you guys how I've been doing it. So really, you only need 3 items, and that is going to be some fabric, ribbon. If you have ribbon, I'm going to show you another way to make the ties if you don't have ribbon, and then pipe cleaners. I got this pack of 100 pipe cleaners at Michael's for like not even $3, maybe $2 or $3. There's 100 pipe cleaners in here. They're 12 inches long, and you need a 6-inch piece for each mask, so you could get 200 masks out of 1 pack of pipe cleaners. So I took the liberty of cutting everything already just so that to keep this video not too long. So since I'm making these in bulk, I went ahead and made a template. This is 6 inches by 9 inches, and I just lay this on top of my fabric and mark it with just a ballpoint pen. Like I said, the idea here is to be able to crank these out quickly. They're not going to be super pretty, they're not going to be perfect, but they're going to be useful. So a ballpoint pen, it may stay on the fabric even after you wash it because these are washable, but it's the quickest, easiest way for me to get my lines down. So I'm going to leave it up to you guys to determine the best way to cut your fabric, but I find that laying multiple layers of fabric on top of each other and then cutting through it all at once gives me the best cuts. I have a very nice pair of actual fabric cutting scissors. So if your scissors aren't quite as sturdy, you can just do a couple pieces at a time. If you're only making a couple masks, you can do a couple pieces at a time. But if you layer fabric on top of each other and then cut through it, it's a little bit easier. So you need your 6x9, 2 pieces of fabric. Some patterns call for 3 pieces of fabric, and you can certainly follow this pattern with 3 pieces of fabric. I just found that when I actually go to do the pleating at the very end, 3 layers of fabric makes this a bit more difficult for my machine to get through, and I do not want to break a needle while I'm making all of these masks. So the Mary Washington Hospital pattern only calls for 2 pieces of fabric, so I'm gonna go with 2 pieces of fabric. Then you're gonna need 4 ties of some kind. I'm using gross grain ribbon. The ribbon, it's not like the smooth silky ribbon. It's textured, it has lines on it, and the reason you don't want to use like a super smooth silky ribbon is because it will come undone when you tie it. So this has some grip to it, and I'm going to talk in just a second about an alternative to the ties if you don't have the ribbon, but ribbon is cheap and easily accessible. You need 4 18-inch pieces. So that is 2 yards of ribbon total. So this is a 10-yard spool. I can get 5 masks out of this spool. And then the last thing that you're going to need is a 6-inch piece of pipe cleaner. And like I said, I might have said this earlier. Sorry if this video is all over the place, but I threw this together at the last minute. I just wanted to get something out to you guys to be able to make these. But this is a 12-inch pipe cleaner. So you're just gonna cut this in half to 6 inches. And then I just used like a very simple tool that's used for like making jewelry, and it's got a little wire cutter in it right there. So I cut the wire cutter in half, and then you're gonna take the end, like 1/2 inch or so of the end, and turn it in. Okay, you're gonna turn that end in, and then you're gonna turn this end in, and that helps to keep the edges from being sharp, okay? So we have our 2 6x9 pieces of fabric, our 4 18-inch ties, and then 1 6-inch piece of wire, either a pipe cleaner, or I've seen people using wire from other ribbon. I've also seen them using like twist ties, something that has a bendable type of wire in it, okay? So just these 3 objects. If you do not have access to this ribbon, you can make your own ties, and I'm just gonna show you a really quick, easy way to do that. This is just for an example. This is another piece that I'm gonna be turning into a mask, but you would cut an 18-inch long strip, so 18 inches long by 1.5 inches wide, okay? So just imagine that this is 18 inches long, 1.5 inches wide. Then what you're gonna do, you're gonna fold it in half. And you don't have to do this. Folding it in half and just kind of pressing on it will make a crease. You're just giving your eyeball something to look at. Or you can take an iron and lightly iron it, but you're gonna fold it in half to find the middle part. You're gonna unfold it, and then you're gonna take one edge, fold to the center, the other edge, fold to the center, and then you're gonna fold this whole thing in half again, and then you're just gonna do a simple running stitch down the edge here to turn this into a tie, okay? You can then fold up the end if you would like, and like you can fold the end up once, twice, and then sew that, or this is a raw edge, so to keep it from an unraveling, before you do all those folds and you sew, you can sew this, you can fold this end up here, and then do your folds in, fold, and then fold. And this is where ironing makes this part a little bit easier, but then fold one more time, and then I would just stitch, stitch, stitch all down along that line, and then turn and stitch this closed here. That'll give you one raw end that you could attach to the mask, and then one nice end, okay? So assuming that you guys have your ties, let's get started. I'm gonna show you, there's a couple different ways that people were attaching the ties, and they were a lot more time consuming than this way, and like I said, my goal is to bust as many of these out as possible. So this is the fastest way that I have found to get these done. So another thing is that a lot of hospitals and care centers have been asking for 2 different kinds of fabric, so that when somebody takes their mask off, they know which way to put it back on, because you don't want to put the mask back on your face that has been facing out. So if you can, use 2 different fabrics. The other alternative is most pattern fabric has a right side and a right side and a wrong side. So instead of putting both right sides together to get when you turn it back on the out, when you turn it back out, you have the nice sides facing out. You can do, let me just grab another piece to show you. You can do right side up, and then when you turn this inside out, it's going to have a nice side and a back side. So that might be another option. The other thing that you can do is actually just use a Sharpie and write back on one side. But if you can get two different kinds of fabric, that is ideal. Honestly, I am just using old fabric that I have. Like, this is a Snoopy Christmas fabric. I have a bunch of Halloween fabric, and then this is just old sheets that I had in a bag that I was going to donate. So to me, this is a much better use of that. So you can use old sheets. I've seen people using t-shirts, but any kind of like tightly woven cotton that you have laying around that you can cut up, that will work. So the side that I want facing out, I'm gonna put down, and like clearly this should have been cut this way so that the pattern was facing nicely. I don't care what it looks like at this point. I cut it sideways, so like Charlie Brown and Snoopy, everybody sideways, but like I said, this is function, not beauty. So if that matters to you, make sure that your fabric is facing the right way. So the front side of the fabric with the pattern facing up, then we're gonna take our back piece and just line it up as best as we can. How did I cut this? I think, yeah. My cuts are not perfect because I'm trying to do this quickly, but just line it up as best as you can. The better you line these fabrics up, the easier it will be when you're sewing. Now, this is what I think makes my way of doing this a little bit more efficient. I've seen in other videos they were using the first piece of fabric and then they were attaching all the ties and then they were putting the second fabric on top and then undoing the pinning and then repinning everything together. That is just way too much time. So what you're gonna do, lay your fabrics like this, just as I have instructed. And we're going to very carefully peel back this corner right here and the top corner. So both of these corners like this. So you have this exposed here. Now we're gonna take our ribbon and you're gonna use this edge and we're gonna line it up. I think this, I'm trying to move my light so that there's not so much glare. How about that? There we go. Okay, sorry. So you're gonna take your ribbon and line it up on the edge about a ½ an inch down from the top here. Let me zoom in if this will let me, yeah, okay. So we're gonna take our ribbon and line it up on the edge there, okay? Then I'm gonna take the piece of fabric that I had folded back and I'm gonna carefully place it back over the top of my ribbon so you guys can see the ribbon through here. So it's now sandwiched in between these two layers of fabric. Using my other hand, lightly apply some pressure so that nothing moves around, and then I'm gonna go pin through both layers of fabric and the ribbon, pinning that in place, okay? So I know the brightness is kind of crazy on this, but I just want you guys to be able to see. So my pin has gone through the ribbon and both pieces of fabric and everything is in place. I'm gonna repeat the same thing over here. Oh, sorry, and then my tail end, don't worry about your tail ends right now. My tail end is just kind of like flapping around. We're gonna deal with the tail ends later. So then I'm gonna repeat the same thing on this side, pull my corner back, take a new piece of ribbon, line it up about a ½ an inch from the top again on the edge with the long tail going this way. You'll see why. My first mask that I sewed, I had the tails facing, flapping out, and when I turned it in, like when you sew it, we're sewing on the wrong side and then we turn it inside out and all of my ties were on the inside. So make sure that your tails are going towards the center. So I'm gonna very carefully lay the fabric back down on top of it, using my hand to kind of hold everything in place. And then again, I'm gonna pin all of this together. So through the top layer of fabric, through the ribbon, through the bottom layer of fabric, and pin everything together. Okay, so that's that. Then I'm gonna do the same thing on the bottom. Flip this back. Don't worry about the tails. We'll come back to the tail ends in just a second. So about a ½ an inch or so from the bottom, line this ribbon up, carefully fold the fabric back down on top of it, pin everything in place. And so what I was seeing in the other videos is people were pinning to the first piece of fabric, pinning the ribbon to the first piece of fabric, laying the second piece of fabric on top of it, pulling the pins out and then repinning everything together. That's just an extra step that takes too long. So this is how I'm doing it. Okay, so then the last corner, we're gonna lay our ribbon down carefully flop this back over. And you might find that with the ribbon, like the more that you have the ribbon coming through, the more unlined up this gets. Just do your best to get everything lined up nicely. It doesn't have to look perfect, but honestly, the better you get things lined up, the easier it is to sew it. Okay, now I'm pinning through top layer of fabric, the ribbon, and the bottom layer of fabric. Okay. All right, so I have all 4 of my ribbons attached at the corners, and then I'm gonna take my ribbon ends and we're gonna stuff those inside this little packet that we made. Stuff all the ends of the ribbon inside. And try to get it as close to the center as you can. I don't know how this one came through this side. But try to get all the ribbon pieces as close to the center as possible because we are going to be sewing around the outside of this little square, this little rectangle. So you just want to make sure that you don't accidentally sew into any of the ribbon pieces that are on the inside. So you can, as you're sewing, you can take a peek and just make sure that nothing is, no ribbon is gonna get sewn into, but basically our sewing pattern is gonna look like this. So we're gonna leave about a 2-inch gap here at the bottom. And the reason we're leaving that gap is for 2 reasons. We need to flip this inside out once we're done sewing it so that the seam is on the inside. And then the second purpose that serves is so that we can get our nose piece inside and attach it to the top. If you're not doing the nose piece, you still have to do this process because we're flipping the mask inside out. So, okay, so it looks like, I know it looks like everything is not lined up, but once we get it once we get it flattened out, everything is gonna line back up a little bit better. So the pattern, the stitches are going to, we're gonna start right here. We're gonna sew all the way around with about a 3/8 inch seam all the way around this square, okay? So we're gonna start here, go all the way around, and then we're gonna stop right here, leaving about a 2-inch opening for our nose piece and for us to be able to flip this inside out. All right, so my face is really close to this camera, so I'm gonna try not to talk too much, but I'm assuming you have a basic familiarity with your machine, and so I don't have to walk you through anything like that, but I'm gonna sew a 3/8 inch seam allowance around the edge of this fabric. We're starting, sorry for the desk is super messy, but my kitchen table has become mask sewing central. So if you can see where I mentioned previously, we're starting right here so that we can leave this little opening right there. So we're gonna sew here all the way around and then come back around, and we're not gonna go all the way across the bottom, we're leaving that pocket open. So here we go. All right, back up a little so I can get, I always do a back stitch on when I'm starting. But just go nice and slow. You can see the holes I already made because something got tangled up and I had to take it all apart and start over. So, well, like I said, not much of a seamstress. All right, when we get to the corner. So when you get to the edge, the easiest thing I find is have the needle, stop when you get to the needle in a down position, lift the foot and pivot, and then put the foot back down so you don't have to worry about lining everything back up. The needle stays in, you can pivot. And then at this point, I'm gonna take this pin out because I do not wanna run over my pin and break my needle. Use my finger to just kind of apply some pressure to keep the ribbon in place. And then I know this ribbon's sticking out down here, so tuck that back inside. They're a little unwieldy, it's gonna happen, so just keep an eye on your ribbons. So we're gonna sew through it. And then I'm gonna back stitch over it just to be extra safe, and then go back through. And my edges are getting a little unaligned. Okay. All right, we're approaching our second ribbon. Gonna do the same thing. Pop this pin out. I'm gonna sew over and back stitch and then go back over. So over the ribbon, back stitch, and then back over. Get to my corner. Sometimes when I get to the corner, I'll just use my manual thing on the side instead of, I take my foot off the presser, and then it's easier to get to the edge without overshooting it. Lift the foot, turn, line everything back up. Get this all back inside. I think this is the hardest part because you're having to deal with the ribbon ends everywhere. So once you get through this, it's not so bad. Okay, there's the end, lift the foot, turn, foot back down, pin out. Sew over, back stitch, and then sew over again. Last ribbon. Sew over, back stitch, and sew over again. And then move it to our corner. There, lift the foot, turn. Okay, foot down. And then we are gonna stop with about a 2-inch hold there. Okay, so back stitch, finish it off. All right, so that is the first part of that done. All right, so we have the first part of our sewing done. All of our straps are attached to all 4 corners and it's still inside out. And then we left that little gap here so that we can turn this right side out and get all of our ties out. So one thing you might wanna do is just clip the corners. So we're just gonna take our scissors and take a diagonal clip across the corners, taking great care not to cut all the stitching that we just did. But what this does is this actually helps to reduce the bulk in the corner so that when we flip it right side out, the corners look a little bit crisper and fit a little bit better. Again, not totally necessary, but it just will make the fit a little bit better. And we want these masks to fit as well as we can. So, okay, so the corners are snipped and now we're gonna turn this right side out and all of our straps are on the inside. The first time I did this, I had my straps attached going the wrong direction. And so when I turned it right side out, for some reason, all the straps were on the inside. So that's not gonna work. So I also, a lot of videos recommended, you know, pressing in between, and a good sewing technique is to press in between, and every time we do any sewing, you press it with the iron, but I'm just trying to get these done as fast as possible. So in lieu of actually ironing this flat, which you could certainly iron it flat, we are gonna do a stitch all the way around the outside to help lie flat, but what I do just to make sure that we get all of our corners poked out is I just take my pen or pencil and just kind of work it into the corner and make sure all the seams are pushed out. Again, doesn't have to be perfect. We're just doing our best to get this done. And this will help with the fit. So anything that we're doing, we're just trying to make it fit better, that's all. Okay, so all of my seams are out. So we have what is starting to resemble a mask anyway. So at this point, we have our ties attached, and we're going to insert our nose piece. So the first couple times that I was inserting the nose piece, I had the worst time trying to get it. This is super, super light. And so when you stick it inside the pocket, it doesn't want to actually like move anywhere. And because it's kind of fuzzy, it gets caught on the fabric. So here's a little trick that I have been using to get my nose piece lined up properly. We're going to take, I'm gonna zoom in on this a little for you guys. We're gonna take the nose piece, and this is the bottom where our little opening is. We're gonna put our nose piece across the top. So I take my nose piece and I kind of eyeball where I want it to sit. We want it to be kind of somewhere in the middle. And then I'm gonna take a pin and I'm going to angle it at the very edge of the nose piece like that. Can you guys see that angle? So I'm gonna use this pin to create kind of a corner here. So this is kind of the middle point. I'm going to take my pin and go through both pieces of fabric and at an angle diagonally. So I know that this is creating kind of a little pocket for my nose piece to slide into when I put it inside, okay? I'm gonna zoom you guys back out. So taking my pipe cleaner, I'm gonna kind of stick it inside and feel for where that little pocket is, and then I'm gonna tuck the edge of my pipe cleaner is going across the mask like this. I'm gonna kind of stick it into that corner I just made and then push it up against the top of the mask. So by creating this little stop right here, you know that that's where the end of your pipe cleaner needs to sit. So this needle right, or this pin right here stops the pipe cleaner from moving around too much. So now I have it pushed all the way up against the top. And now I'm gonna just feel that the pipe cleaner ends right here. So now I'm gonna take another pin, move this down just a little bit more. Okay, that's a little more even. So I'm gonna take another pin, and where the pipe cleaner ends right here, I'm going to put the pin just to the right of that, again at an angle, and this tells me where I need to sew my next part. I'm gonna zoom you guys back in so you can see that. So the pattern of this fabric makes it a little difficult to see, but I have one pin going here, one pin going here, and my pipe cleaner is sitting pushed up against the top seam. Okay, so when I sew, I'm gonna go all the way around the mask right now, come up here, get to the end of my nose piece, sew down a little bit, and then across, and then back up to the edge so that I'm creating a little pocket for my nose piece. It'll make more sense when you guys see me actually sewing that part, but the seam's gonna go all the way around the mask, then we're gonna come over, down, across, up, and then back to the edges. So we're creating a little pocket for our mask. I'll show you on a finished one if you guys can see right here. The stitching is at the edge, and then I come down, go across, and then back up to the edge again, and my nose piece is sitting right inside here. Okay, so I'm starting in this corner, and if you want to press this little pocket closed first with an iron, you certainly can. I'm just trying to be as quick as possible. So I just folded this edge in. This is the raw edges of my pocket. I folded the edges in, and I'm just kind of holding it. You can pin it shut if you want. I'm just kind of holding it with my fingers and sewing that part shut. So if you want to iron it, you certainly can. Not absolutely necessary. So let's line up. Okay, so my needle is going into this edge, leaving about a 3/8 inch seam. We're gonna sew all the way around and close our opening and create our nose piece pocket right now. And this part is where we're actually going to go over the ribbon again. So remember how I mentioned it's not terribly important that you backstitch over the ribbon. We're going over it again right now. All right, so we're getting to our nose piece. So watch what I do when I get to the nose piece. We're gonna go I'm gonna go slowly almost up to the pin. I can feel my nose piece starts. I'm gonna take my pin out, and I can feel the nose piece starts right about here, right at the very edge of my foot. So I'm gonna do just a couple more stitches to get closer. That's about it. Maybe one more. Lift my foot, turn at an angle. We're not gonna do a full 90-degree turn. It's about 45 degrees. Stitch, and then lift my foot. Actually, put my needle down, lift the foot, and turn again. So my foot is going to be running right along the nose piece here, okay? So I'm creating a pocket to hold that nose piece into place. And I'm just using my fingers to kind of feel where that nose piece sits. Here's my next pin. I'm gonna pull it out. The nose piece ends right about there, so I'm just gonna go a little bit further. And yeah, my nose piece is right there, so I'm gonna get my needle down position, lift the foot, turn 45 degrees again, and now we're gonna angle back out to the edge right here. To the edge of my mask. Okay. Turn. Don't sew over any of your ties, your ribbons. I'd say I'm somewhere between 3/8 and 1/4 of an inch seam. Nothing too perfect. Back stitch to end it. There we go. Okay. All right. So that's that part done. All right, so we have now sewn around the entirety of the mask. We have closed up the opening at the bottom that we used to turn the mask right side out, and we have also created a pocket for our nose piece. So again, this is not perfect by any means. It's hard to film and to sew at the same time, and even at the best of times, I'm not a super great seamstress, but I kept about a 3/8 to 1/4 inch seam all around the outside of this mask, and then if you can see, I don't know if you guys can see that angle that I created to create this little pocket for my nose piece. And when you do it like this, if the nose piece starts to poke through or it's rusting or it's causing issues, the person who owns the mask, all they have to do is slit open the seam right here. They can pull the nose piece out, hand stitch this back together, and they can either replace the nose piece with another pipe cleaner or just sew it back together and this mask is still usable. So now what we're going to do is we're going to create our pleats, sew the pleats, and then this mask is done. So like I said, super, super easy. I'm gonna clean up a couple of these strands. Gotta have some standards, right? Okay, so those, clip those off. So now, at first I wasn't sure if the pleats were necessary because I was scared of sewing pleats, but when I tried fitting this to my face without the pleats, it just does not fit as well. So sew the pleats on here, they're super easy. We're gonna kinda, maybe at the top 1/3 or about an inch down from the top of our mask, you're gonna pinch and just do a very small fold, okay? Kind of hold it in place with your hand. Again, you can press this if you want. I'm not going to, so I'm just going to pin this pleat into place. Pin this pleat into place. And do the same thing on the other side. It even says on the instructions from Mary Washington Hospital, nobody's gonna be judging your pleats or your sewing skills. They just are in very desperate need of these products. Okay, that's that. And then we're going to pinch again, maybe about a 1/2 inch down from that first pleat. Pinch again, and fold and hold that down and pin this into place. If your pleat comes undone on the other side while you're pinning one side, that's no big deal. Just kind of fold it back down and even it up. Just do your best. Pin the pleat. And I have a pretty heavy duty machine, and this is where it can get a little dicey because now we have folded the fabric over on itself multiple times and we are trying to sew through all these layers of fabric. So my machine, I know my machine can handle like denim material, but you just wanna go really, really slow. You don't wanna break a bunch of needles, so just go really, really slow. Listen to your machine, back off if necessary, and you could possibly, you might even err on the side of caution and hand stitch this part, but what we're gonna do is we're just gonna sew, we're gonna use about a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and then we're going to sew straight down through the pleats on this side, straight down through the pleats on this side, and that's it, we're done. All right, sewing the pleats. So this part is a little bit more difficult. But you're just going to, I don't want to sew through any of my pins, so I'm going to pull those out before I even get close to them. And we're going to start right at the top. And we're leaving about a 1/2 inch allowance here on the side. So, okay, my foot's down. Push my needle in to get started. Sew a couple and then back stitch up to the top. Okay, we're approaching our first needle. Pull the needle out. And then I just use my hands to my fingers to keep pressure on the pleat. And the pressure from the foot will help it stay in place as well, but just kind of use your fingers to keep that pleat down. Okay, first pleat sewn. We are approaching our second pin. Get that out. And sew through our second pleat. Just go slow. And we are at the end. Okay, I'm gonna back stitch. And that's it. That's the first pleat done. All right, we are doing our second pleat, and this is slightly more awkward than the other side because you're coming from the bottom up and you're approaching the pleats backwards. So just keep the pressure on the pleats. That should help. Couple stitches forward, couple stitches back, couple stitches forward, and then first pleat. I'm gonna pull my seam out or pin out. Do not pull your seam out. And just make sure that your foot glides over that first pleat. Sometimes I've had my foot get hung up on that pleat and it's annoying. Okay. Approaching our second needle, pin, whatever. Pull that out. Alright. Get to the end, back stitch. Alright, that's it. All right, so we are pretty much done. Just a couple finishing touches that will help make this mask last a little bit longer. We're gonna cut off all of our extra little pieces. Ruby is barking at nobody. Hey, hey. I can't do this in my office because I don't have any room there for my sewing machine. So we are out in the wild with the creatures. All right, cutting off my extra little pieces. That looks pretty good. And then the last thing that we're gonna do is, because we are using ribbon, I'm going to cut this ribbon at an angle like this to help prevent fraying. Oops. I'm gonna cut my ribbon at an angle like this. And then I'm not gonna do this on camera, but you can take a lighter or a match and just run it along the edge of the ribbon and just kind of melt the plastic a little bit, and that's gonna help prevent this ribbon from fraying. So I've read that just cutting it at the angle should be enough to keep it from fraying, but just to be extra safe, I cut mine at an angle, and then I also burned the edges. Ruby. Okay, so, all right. Now we have a mask. I tried this on my husband as well, and it fit him, a male face, and it fits my face, female face. It should, because of the pleats, it should also be able to fit a child's face or like a young adult's face. But in the pattern that I share below, they do actually have sizes for children, and so you can make these smaller if you need to. I hope that was helpful. I'm gonna leave all the links that I use to create my masks down below. So there's a couple different patterns. There's a couple other videos that might have a little bit more in-depth sewing information if you are even more of a beginner sewer than I am. So make sure to check those out. I've had people starting to contact me on Facebook and ask if they can buy masks from me. I'm not selling masks, I am donating them, but I am thinking about leaving my PayPal link below for people if they want to make donations to help me purchase more supplies. If you guys are so inclined and want to help in that way, I would greatly appreciate it, as would the elderly community in my area. And if you guys really are in need of a mask and are having trouble getting a hold of one, please send me a message either through my email, leave me a comment down below, or find me on Instagram and send me a message there. Contact me and I will see what I can do about getting a mask mailed out to you guys if you can just help me with postage. I don't know how much longer my supplies are going to hold out, but if I can help you and your family in any way, just please let me know and I will do what I can. All right, guys, I hope that video was helpful. Leave me a comment or a question down below and I will do my best to get back to you as soon as possible. Stay safe and I will see you guys in my next video.